convenes. The next item of business is First Minister's questions. At question number 1, I call Russell Findlay.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Despite sustained efforts by my party, Scotland's Parliament does not want to talk about a case that everyone across Scotland is talking about. So we're going to talk about that right now. A female nurse with 30 years of dedicated service to the NHS faces the sack for her concerns about a man using a women's changing room. The Employment Tribunal will rule in due course, but there is absolutely no reason why MSPs cannot discuss the wider issues. Women's spaces must be for women and girls. So does John Swinney agree that every woman in Scotland should be entitled to this and to say this without losing their job?
First Minister.
So before I answer Russell Findlay's question, I just want to take this opportunity to place on record the fact that on Monday I will attend a commemoration service in Edinburgh to mark the 3rd anniversary of the illegal invasion of Ukraine. And I am certain when I go to that, I will go there with the wholehearted support of every member of this Parliament who is repulsed by the invasion of Ukraine by Russia and stands in solidarity with the people of Ukraine. I have, of course, been paying very close attention to the issues raised by Mr Findlay and by Conservative members in Parliament, and the Government has taken the view that we cannot comment on the ongoing proceedings that Mr Findlay raises. The reason for that is set out in Section 1 of the Judiciary and Courts Scotland Act 2008, which at Section 1, under the title of Guaranteed of Continued Judicial Independence, it says that the following persons must uphold the continued independence of the judiciary: A, the First Minister; B, the Lord Advocate; C, the Scottish Ministers; D, members of the Scottish Parliament. It goes on at subsection 2 to say, in particular, the First Minister, the Lord Advocate and the Scottish Ministers must not seek to influence judicial decisions through any special access to the judiciary. Now, if I was to comment on this case, I would be in danger of breaking the law. And I believe in the rule of law, and nobody will persuade me to break the rule of law in this Parliament. No questioning from Mr Findlay, no barracking, no heckling, nothing will stop me from protecting the right to ensure that the law is upheld in this country. The guidance that is in place in relation to the issues that Mr Findlay raises on a general level explains as follows. The Equality Act 2010 does allow the provision to exclude a trans person from single or separate-sex facilities. These kinds of decisions must be made on a case-by-case basis. Managers must balance the needs of the trans person to use this facility against the needs of other members of staff. They should also consider if other staff members will experience any disadvantage if the trans person is allowed to use the facilities. That is the position and guidance supported by law, and I hope that answers Mr Findlay's question.
Russell Findlay.
Thank you. I also look forward to attending the memorial service on Monday, and I wholeheartedly agree with the First Minister's comments in that regard. We can indeed talk about the generalities of this case, despite the First Minister's selective legal interpretations. The SNP Health Secretary was warned directly last year about the NHS ignoring women's fundamental rights under the Equality Act, but he did nothing about it. And just weeks ago, Scotland's NHS published what it describes as a gender transitioning guide. This official document confirms that women's rights to single-sex spaces are not protected in the NHS. But the document has now disappeared from the NHS website. The page appears to have been deleted. So has this guidance been scrapped? And if it has not, will John Swinney do so?
First Minister.
I don't think it's good enough for Russell Findlay to say that I've selectively expressed the basis of the position that I take that I cannot comment on live legal proceedings, because the law requires me not to do so. And if Russell Findlay cannot respect that, and accept that, then I think the Conservative Party is in a pretty dismal place if that is their position today. And I come back to the point that I made in my first answer, that the guidance, and I'm reading from the guidance that Mr Findlay is talking about, the Equality Act 2010 does allow the provision to exclude a trans person from single or separate sex facilities. These kinds of decisions must be made on a case-by-case basis. Managers must balance the needs of the trans person to use this facility against the needs of other members of staff. They should also consider if other staff members will experience any disadvantage if the trans person is allowed to use the facilities. Now, that's the second time I've put that on the record, openly and candidly to Parliament. Mr Findlay should now start to adjust his questions, because I've answered the point that he's put to me.
Russell Findlay.
I'm going to repeat this again, and I'll do it very slowly for the First Minister's benefit. At no point have I asked him to comment on this specific case, although I do note that his Health Secretary did exactly that yesterday. Now, this madness isn't just happening within the NHS. It's in schools, it's in prisons, it's in rape crisis centres. Female pupils too scared to use shared toilets over fear of sexual intimidation or assault. A male prisoner serving life for murder in a women's prison and able to get an operation to reduce his Adam's apple. Rape victims being told they are bigots for wanting to know the sex of their counsellor. Scotland's public services waste too much time, energy and money on this nonsense, all because of SNP gender self-ID policy and legislation with the backing of Labour, the Lib Dems and the Greens. And yesterday, astonishingly, John Swinney said that he has no regrets. Does he really have no regrets about causing all this harm to women and all this cost to taxpayers?
First Minister.
I think the point that Mr Findlay skates past is the significance of the Equality Act 2010, which was enshrined, because it has to be enshrined, because we can't change the law, because it's a reserved piece of legislation, is enshrined in the legislation that this Parliament passed on gender recognition. So I've quoted to Mr Findlay the fact that the Equality Act 2010 makes provision for there to be single or separate sex facilities and for those rights to be put into practice and into place. I don't know why Mr Findlay is so determined to just keep pursuing this line of argument, which is about sowing division in our society, when the legal position is absolutely crystal clear that the Equality Act protects the ability to have single-sex spaces in our country, and Mr Findlay should accept that.
Russell Findlay.
Well, John Swinney, there's two things happening here. Either he's in a state of complete denial or he's a very good actor. I'm not sure which. The SNP focus on the issue of gender has harmed Scotland's public services. They've put their ideology before the rights of women and girls, but also before NHS waiting lists, before justice for victims, before our children's education. Anna Sarwar and the Lib Dem leader are just as culpable as the SNP. Their collective support for this nonsense confirms how utterly disconnected Parliament has become from the real world. My party believes all government time and money should be devoted to fixing Scotland's public services, not on radical fringe policies. And that's where we proudly stand. So what about John Swinney? Will he do the right thing and bin his gender ideology that is causing so much harm to our country?
First Minister.
Again, Mr Findlay ignores the point I've put to him about the significance of the Equality Act and the obligation and the underpinning of all legislation and its requirements to be compatible with the Equality Act 2010. Now, Mr Findlay asked me about my priorities, and my priorities are absolutely crystal clear. I'm in office to improve the lives of the people of Scotland by making sure that we eradicate child poverty, by making sure that we grow the economy, by making sure we make the transition to net zero, and make sure that we strengthen the public services of Scotland. We've got a budget before this Parliament next Tuesday that will turn this into effect. The people who are standing in the way of that budget being approved to improve the lives of the people of Scotland, the people that are standing in the way of that budget being approved.
Let's hear the First Minister.
The people that are standing in the way of that budget being approved, the people that are not interested in improving the lives of the people of Scotland, are the Conservative Party and their parade in front of Nigel Farage, who support their courting in Scotland today. So I am going to take no lessons from Russell Findlay, who has no interest in the prospects and the future of the people of Scotland. He's only here to support division. I'm here to bring people together.